as this is our first vote, let me remind you of our process. There shall be a poll for all votes today. So the poll coming up will say, shall the Presbytery approve the agenda for today's meeting as presented? Once you see that poll, please vote yes or no. Okay, there are 143 votes in favor, no votes against. I declare that the agenda is approved. Thank you very much. I now recognize Interim General Presbyter and Stated Clerk Fred Holbrook for the Stated Clerk's report and the consent agenda, which can be found starting on page 1 in the packet. Good morning again, Fred.
Good morning again, moderator. The Presbytery can find the Stated Clerk report and the consent agenda starting on page 1 in the packet. Just a couple of highlights. You will note that there's a letter of protest on page 2 that was received, recorded in the minutes of the February 20th stated meeting and responded to by particular actions included in today's agenda. There's a commissioner's report on page 3, a report from the Gordonsville Administrative Commission on page 4, approving this consent agenda today, moderator, also includes the motion on page 6 to dissolve the AC with Presbytery's appreciation and gratitude. That's the Administrative Commission. So moderator, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, this requires a second. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Are there any questions or anything that you would like to remove from the consent agenda? You may indicate those again by raising your hand or pressing *9 on your phone. Anything that you would like to remove or questions you have about the consent agenda? Fred.
Moderator, I request removing the minutes of the stated meeting of February 20 so that an amendment can be presented.
Okay. We need a second on that, I believe. Is that right, Fred? We need a second for
Yes,
that?
that's
Okay.
correct. I see
Okay.
that Clay.
Okay, Clay, are you seconding that?
Second
Good morning,
the
Clay.
motion. Yes.
Seconding the removal of the February 20th minutes.
Good
Okay.
morning.
All right. Any further discussion on that motion to remove the February 20th minutes? Please indicate so by raising your hand. Okay, I recognize Catherine Corbon. Good morning, Catherine.
I apologize. That was an error.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So the motion before you is to remove the February 20th minutes from the consent agenda. We're going to put that into a poll for you as soon as I have, and we've had the second. And we're just going to wait for the poll to come up.
Moderator, I believe, there we go.
Okay. Okay, the motion carries 149 votes. No, none, and opposed. Okay. All right. The other, thank you. Fred, is there an amendment you wish to present?
Yes, moderator, I move to amend the minutes of February 20th, 2021 to reflect that the presbytery granted the permissive powers of G 3.03 to the Administrative Commission for the Gordonsville Church.
Okay, you have heard the motion to amend. Is there a second? I'm looking for a raised hand for a second. Okay, I see two, Clay McCully and Kenneth Payne. Is there any further discussion? Please indicate so by raising your hands.
Moderator, if I might say, this was in the notes that I had from the meeting, but I did not include it in the minutes that were presented for approval today. So that was my mistake. And this will correct it. And then we'll have allowed the Administrative Commission to do their work with the blessing of the presbytery.
Thank you very much. Mr. State Clerk, I did see a raised hand. Brent Keys, did you raise your hand? No, I see the hand is down now. Okay. All right, so we need to have a vote to amend the minutes to reflect the presbytery grant the permissive powers of G 3.03. Is that right, Mr. State Clerk?
That is correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, the motion is on the floor. We do not have a, this is the only way we can get a vote count as a poll, I think. The motion is to amend February 20th minutes to reflect presbytery grant powers of G 3.03 to the administrative.
Mr. Moderator, we can't hear you.
For the Gordonsville Church. That's because you didn't need to.
Yeah. The moderator is giving to Jess Cook, our producer, the words that need to be in the poll for the vote. And again, my apologies for causing our producer to have to create this so quickly.
All right, the poll is before you and please vote. Okay, 143 in favor and 1 opposed. I declare the motion carries. Mr. State Clerk, does that conclude your report?
That is, yes, thank you. It does conclude the report.
Thank you. I again recognize Ruling Elder Kenneth Payne, moderator of the Mission Council, to present their report, which you will find on page 8 of the packet. Good morning again, Kenna. Oh, hold on a second. It looks as apparently Alan Fisher has a question. Alan.
Thank you, moderator. Have we approved the consent agenda yet?
Yes, we did that as part of a former action minus the February the 20th minutes that was on the poll. We approved the consent agenda minus the February 20th minutes. Thank you for the clarification. Kenna?
Thank you, moderator. The Mission Council's reports begin on page 8 of the report packet. And you can see the actions that we've taken on the presbytery's behalf. We are making two recommendations this morning. One of them is particularly important, so I'm going to read the entire motion. It can be found on page 9 of your packet, and then I will make some background comments. The Mission Council and the trustees, please note this is a joint recommendation with the Presbytery's trustees, make the recommendation that in implementing the strategic plan and in answer to the protest filed on February 20th, 2021, sorry, I've got the wrong date in there, the Presbytery renamed the Net Asset Fund, formerly called Church Development Fund, as the Church and Ministries Development Fund, and that its use be redesignated to provide resources for the Presbytery's budget in support of the growth and development of the life of our particular churches and ministries. This designation would be effective December 31st, 2020. Such budgetary needs might include, but would not be limited to, bricks and mortar projects, staff costs for the current general presbyter, stewardship associate, and evangelism associate, which is currently vacant but budgeted. These three until the new model becomes effective, or the 3 presbyters in the new staffing model when the new model becomes effective, technology assistance to churches and ministries, support of officially designated new worshiping communities, costs in support of other new and existing ministries. These could be multi-year commitments, direct costs of educational opportunities to churches and ministries and their leaders, such as seminars, workshops, and things like that, and direct financial assistance. The Church and Ministries Development Net Asset Fund would not be used for the following types of expenses: staff costs for other presbytery associates, the administrative office expenses, depreciation, most leadership connection team and mission service team expenses, denominational relations expenses, constitutional committees expenses, and the stated clerk expenses. That's our motion, our recommendation. The background is that this fund, as it was named and used previously, focused originally on loans and bricks and mortars. The Presbytery stopped loaning churches years ago, and so it had been used pretty much for bricks and mortars and a few, very few specific church development uses. We think that by broadening this definition and the designation of these funds, it allows that fund to be drawn on for future budgetary needs. We have started the implementation of the new strategic plan, which was overwhelmingly approved at the February meeting. And the first thing, among the first things the Mission Council did was to address some financing issues. And one of these is this motion to help align our resources with the strategic plan to be used in ways that invest in and support the new staffing model and the current year's equivalent staffing. This is in addition to the more traditional church development use. At December 31st, the end of the fiscal year, the invested assets of the Presbytery was $4,467,000. We would make sure that every year when we present the budget, we would provide detailed information on the use of this fund as to which programs it would support. And we have committed to the Presbytery that within by the end of the fall of 2024, which is after a full 3-year cycle of the new strategic plan implementation and staffing model, if not before then, that would be the latest, that we will be reviewing the financial implications of that strategic plan. So I would like to ask that as part of the background information that we call on Shannon Hendricks, who is the vice moderator of the Mission Council committee, Mission Council, but she was also on the strategic plan to put this recommendation in context even more succinctly than I could with the objectives and the wishes and dreams and hoped for of the strategic plan. So if I may ask for Shannon to present, please.
Good morning and thank you. Speaking as a former member of the strategic planning team, we have dissolved, so mostly my opinions reflecting what we discussed. But we spent a lot of time when we were together talking about how our presbytery encompasses more than just parish ministries, and how we have such vibrant things happening in our churches, as well as on college campuses and in our prisons and hospitals and so many more things. And so we were discussing how the Spirit is moving in these great ways in our presbytery, and hence we expanded our mission statement for the presbytery to be: the mission of the POJ is to support leaders, congregations, and ministries in growing followers of Jesus Christ who joyfully live out God's mission in the world. And we saw that investing in the people that we have is a way for us to develop the church at large, expanding not just our parish ministries, but ministries all over. And so we wanted to have that room for these things to happen. And we were talking, we didn't use the specific language, but in the nonprofit model of financial development, you invest in your relationships with people and those things that leads to growth. And so by expanding the definition of this fund, we are looking to invest in those relationships and invest in the people and invest in the ways that we see the Spirit moving in our presbytery. So I think that sums up.
Thank you, Shannon. Moderator, that ends our presentation on this motion.
Thank you, Kenna. So the back of the poll, you will see, are there, I guess I should open, there's questions. This is being coming from council. Are there questions? If you have questions. I'll just kill that, yeah. Questions for the Mission Council, please raise your hand. I recognize Liz Home Adam. Good morning, Liz. Please unmute your mic, Liz.
Yeah, thank you. A quick question about the, Kenna, you mentioned this deadline of 2024. To whom will be accountable for keeping that deadline? I mean, how will the trail be honored between now and then with staffing changes?
Well, the Mission Council, thank you for your question, Liz. The Mission Council and the trustees jointly look at the monthly financial statements. That's the first thing. It's not like it's going to disappear from our radar on an ongoing basis. We have committed to this. It will be passed on through the institutional knowledge and the people who remain on the Mission Council through the end of 2024. It may be possible that we have to come back much earlier than that, or in mid 2024, but that is what we have committed as a body, to review this no later than 3 full years into the new staffing model and new strategic plan. And we certainly expect and hope that the presbytery will hold our feet to that reporting deadline.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Liz. I recognize J.R. Marker. J.R., good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. J.R. Marker, ruling elder, Fairfield Presbyterian. I have a question. At the last Presbytery meeting, I specifically asked if the funds the earnings were allocated specifically to the way they were designated, and I was given an emphatic yes. And I was looking through the material provided for the meeting, and I see Carson's letter of protest, but I don't see how the Mission Council went from that emphatic yes to needing to change the way these funds were designated. What was the process to get from point A to point B, I guess is my question.
The process was, had two arms to it. One, we needed to address the protest that was filed. Secondly, we were beginning the work of implementation of the strategic plan, of which the Mission Council is responsible at all levels of the presbytery. We needed to review some of our net asset funds to see if they were going to be available or could be available to invest in ourselves, as we've all been talking about on this new strategic plan. So to answer what sounded like your initial question, yes, invested the funds in the records of the presbytery that make up part of that, that make up that invested assets, the actual money on deposit with an investment account, they all do receive a portion of the net, hopefully it's net earnings on any given year. It has been net earnings for many years now. And that happens behind the scenes as part of the accounting. I don't know if that answers it, but we needed to figure out what could be done to support the new strategic plan by our own designation and redesignation of the use of some of these funds.
So I guess I'm still confused that, at the last meeting, it was said that, those funds were being used for their designated purpose, but now we're changing the designated purpose in order to be able to use the funds. Is that?
The question was brought up as to the use of the funds as they were previously designated in the Mission Council's judgment. That has been a very restricted bricks and mortars and very few other uses of those funds. We are seeking through this recommendation to broaden the use of these funds to more directly support and provide resources to support this transition to the new strategic plan by broadening that. Now it can cover some staff costs. Now it can cover, all the things that we've listed as possibilities. It isn't just bricks and mortar, build a new church, because we are not building new churches. We are not seeing that happen.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
you,
you,
JR. Thank you, JR. I recognize Alan Fisher. Good morning again, Alan.
Good morning, moderator. Would it be possible to find out if there were any bequests or endowed funds at the base of the funds that are before us right now? I'm just wanting to review our fiduciary roles on funds that may have been received in earlier generations.
In its predecessor form, previous to this, the history goes back much farther than almost even the existence of the Presbytery of the James. The recollection of our previous general presbyter was that there were no donor designated funds, that everything was designated by the presbytery one way or the other, and that in previous iterations. And we have done a research that goes back almost those 30 to 40 years of minute and trustees minutes and administrative council minutes, and we could find no evidence or any motion or any even passing reference to any of this money being donor designated.
Thank you so much for that information.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, Alan. Any further questions? Seeing no raised hands, are we ready to vote? The poll coming before you will appear momentarily. Again, I ask you to indicate your vote yes or no. I'll read it back for those of you who are on the phone. Shall the Presbytery approve the recommendation to rename the Net Asset Fund, formerly called Church Development Fund, as the Church and Ministries Development Fund, and redesignate its use to provide resources for the budget effective December 31st, 2020? Should that be 2020, Kenna?
Yes, it should be 2020, a typo on the poll.
Not 2021, December 2020. Not
Sorry.
December 31st, 2021, December 2020. Okay. I see 138 in favor, 139 in favor, and 7 opposed. I declare the motion carries.
The
Kenna,
Mission Council, I'm
Kenna,
sorry.
I want to honor the need of perhaps some break. So what I'll do is perhaps, actually, you know what? Continue with your next recommendation and we'll probably take a break after your completion.
Thank you. The Mission Council has a second recommendation, and that can be found on page 11. Again, I'm going to read the motion in its entirety. The Mission Council makes the final recommendation, the following recommendation, that in implementing the strategic plan and in answer to the protest filed on at our February meeting, and pending approval of the joint recommendation from the Mission Council and trustees, the motion that was just passed, the Presbytery approved the following revision to the 2021 budget, excuse me. The revision being proposed affects only the breakdown of amounts to be allocated as needed from the net asset funds of the Presbytery as follows. Under the Church Development Fund, which was the old name, the original budget had $210,001 and is now zero under the proposed revision. The Church and Ministries Development Fund, which is the new name, had nothing under the proposed, the approved 2021 budget, and is now $478,297 under the proposed revision. The Dismissed Churches Fund, under the approved budget, is $76,751. Under the proposed revision, it would be $38,990. Undesignated funds were in the approval were $230,535. Under the proposed, it is zero. And General Assembly Commissioner Fund was under the approved budget was $5,000, and under the proposed revision remains at $5,000. The total of those amounts has not changed. It is $522,287. All this proposal does is realign 3 out of the 4 line items in that section. And if you want to see where that applies, if you look at page 12, which is the budget to actual through April 30th, you'll see it's about a third of the way down the first page, use of existing funds. We are making this proposed revision in light of the implementation, the first steps of implementing the strategic plan, and in response to the Mission Council on behalf of the protest to the Presbytery that was referred to the Mission Council. The protest took exceptions to the Presbytery's approval of the budget concerning the use of net asset funds of the Presbytery for support. Other details on the background for this motion are on page 11 following the motion.
Okay, the motion is before you. Are there any questions, comments on the motion? Please raise your hand if you have any. Okay, I recognize Carson Ryan. Good morning, Carson.
Good morning, moderator. I'm just wondering what's the balance in the dismissed churches fund? I'm assuming it's at 38,000 and then nothing will be left. Is that correct?
Hang on just a minute. Oh, just this church. Dismissed Churches Funds is now called Genesis and Generations Fund, and as of December 31st, it had $336,000 in it, in the net asset fund.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carson. Other questions, please raise your hand. Okay, I see no further raised hands, so you've made the motion, Kenna, correct? After all that background, just making sure you formally made the motion.
Yes.
All right, so the motion on the floor is that in implementing the strategic plan in answer to the protest filed on February 15th, 2021, and pending approval of joint recommendation from Mission Council and trustees, the Presbytery approved the following revisions to the 2021 budget as outlined by Kenna and in your packet. Revision being proposed affects only to break down the amounts to be allocated as needed from the net assets fund of the Presbytery. That is the motion, and you'll see a poll. Please indicate yes or no once. Okay. There are 143 in favor and 4 opposed. I declare the motion carries.
That concludes our report, moderator.
Thank you, Kenna. At this time, we had promised you a break. We were supposed to break at 11, so I'm going to declare that we're going to break now for 10 minutes. So please return here at 11:15. All right, friends, I call us back to order. I do see a raised hand. Arch Wallace, good morning, Arch. You have a question? Go ahead and unmute, Arch.
Am I on? Yeah. Mine's a point of order, if I might raise it. Someone texted me a few minutes ago, said you're on twice. I'm not. The other site is for an elder here in our church who's using my second computer. So please record, I'm only on once.
Thank you, Arch, very much. I appreciate that. We do have one item that we need to address, and that is that we did approve the amendment to the February 20th minutes, but we did not approve the minutes as they were amended. So what I'd like to do now is that put before you to say the February 20th minutes is amended. When you approve that, is there any objection to approving the February 20 minutes as amended? Is there any objection? And if you have an objection, raise your hand. Okay, seeing no raised hands, I declare that those February 20 minutes as amended have been approved. I now recognize Elder Dan Jordanger, former moderator of the Personnel Committee, who brings a special recognition, and I'll say hello, good morning, Mr. Vice Moderator.
Thank you, moderator, and good morning, everyone. Has lived and shared the gospel within our Presbytery since the fall of 2014. She has applied her energy, creativity, optimism, and smarts to many roles, including her current service as Associate Director of Outdoor Ministry at Camp Hanover and Associate for Youth Ministry within the Presbytery of the James. Colleen is, to our regret, moving on from both positions between now and our fall Presbytery meeting, and we want to honor and thank her this morning for her service. As many of you know, Colleen has a deep love and appreciation of nature and a gift for sharing her love with all with whom she comes in contact. The outdoor ministry that God has gifted and assigned to Colleen has benefited and will continue to benefit countless people that she helps to connect with God's creation. Colleen also has had a deep and lasting impact on young people as leader of the Presbytery's Youth Council. I now want to call on Virginia Adams and Doug Walters at Camp Hanover to to share their thoughts about Colleen.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Virginia Adams. I started coming to Camp Hanover as a camper in 2008, and I served on youth council with Colleen for 3 years, as well as on Camp Hanover's Camp Hanover Ministries Board. And while I have been so incredibly blessed throughout my life to have 2 wonderful parents, and I'm not just saying that because one of them is on this Zoom call, I firmly believe that it's important to have other adults, I think, in your life that you can trust, especially throughout high school. I think my parents would say this as well. And it was so incredible to have Colleen, because for me, Colleen was that adult. And Colleen is the kind of adult that I think every kid needs in their life in high school. Her ability to reach out to every youth, to text them throughout their days and their weeks to see how it was going. She checked in pretty regularly, not just to find out if we were coming to the youth council meeting, but also to find out how an important game or match had gone and how our classes were going. She took her time to get to know us and to get to know what was important to us. And I think I speak for everyone on youth council when I say that if it was important to one of us, it was important to one of Colleen. It became important to Colleen. Sorry, we knew that she cared about us, and that was a priority for her. A huge part of high school nowadays, probably unfortunately, is taking standardized tests. And when I found out at camp that one of mine had not gone great and started crying in the middle of a staff meeting, she really listened and she cared, and she did not dismiss me and tell me that it wouldn't matter in 3 years, even though it has now been 3 years and I'm over it. But she knew that in the moment that wouldn't work. And she valued how upset I was and made me feel like I was valid. And I feel like feeling valid and affirmed is so important, especially now with so much messaging going out to high schoolers, especially on social media, that makes kids feel less than valid. And Colleen, no matter how silly the concern was, never doubted whether it was valid. She also took it one step further than just listening and being supportive and all of those amazing pastoral care skills with the programming she built. Both on youth council and at camp, she strove to empower the high schoolers she worked with and the kids of all age groups, and to make kids feel capable. When I participated in the Pathfinder program, which is Camp Hanover's leadership and training program, she asked for our help on everything from building a chicken coop to helping lead a worship service. And while picking the color of the chicken coop became one of the greatest honors of my tenure at Camp Hanover, it is also, I just think, really important for kids to hear that they're trusted to do things. It matters that Colleen took this time to say, hey, I see you, and I think you're capable of helping me with this thing. Hearing that and feeling empowered and capable is really important. Colleen understood this. On youth council, she took the time to build a really intentional community with team building and with helping us and guiding us in discussions of really hard questions, like why can it be hard to love ourselves, but also why is it so important? She helped us organize a cleanup project on the James River. And I think tackling all of these issues with her guidance really helped me feel that I was capable and worthy and valued in a community. And that can be so hard to come by. And she continues to be so important to me. I have many times, even in college, called her when I'm upset or having a bad day, and I know she'll answer. And I think that that is really important. And I'm really, really grateful to have had this incredible opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, folks.
Good morning, Doug.
Colleen Earp has been an invaluable member of the Camp Hanover team. During her 7 years of service as the Associate for Outdoor Ministry, Colleen has left an indelible mark on this place and the people who are transformed by their experiences here through her passion for creation and soil and earth care. Early on, by securing grant funding through the Department of Conservation, Colleen preserved and enhanced an area of natural beauty at Camp Hanover, the Pollinator Meadow, a sacred space now home to 50 species of flowering fauna native to Virginia. Colleen has been the driving force, growing the Good Pastures Environmental Stewardship Program, collaborating with teachers across Hanover County to launch Camp Tomato, an environmental studies program for 4th grade students, delivering produce grown in the camp garden to local food pantries to help feed the hungry, establishing a seed bank to encourage connection with the earth and with each other across continents and generations. You too can grow 3-foot-long string beans and heirloom German pink tomatoes, the same variety enjoyed by Junie, the young GI who carried these seeds from his favorite tomato with him back across the Atlantic as he returned from fighting in World War II. Reading bedtime stories to chickens and holding swim lessons for her webbed-footed friends, Colleen has been and is still the mother hen to many a baby chick, duckling, and perching waterfowl. She is a goat wrangler and snake charmer and queen bee of the honeybee hive. A talented musician in her own right, Colleen brought joyful noise from across the world, encouraging inclusivity and diversity, teaching us new songs, enriching the sounds of summer camp with old-timey spirituals, chants from the Middle East, harmonies from South Africa, melodies from the Caribbean and South America. With rhythmic clapping, she helped us raise hymns of grateful praise to the Lord of all, for the beauty of the earth, for the beauty of the skies, for the love from which our birth over and around us lies. Planting tire gardens and painting rain barrels, Colleen found creative ways to make camp a place where the mission service of Cindy Coral could be interpreted and supported in an effort to advocate for food sovereignty for the people of Haiti. And as Camp Hanover's resident seminary student, we often look to Colleen to answer our theological ponderings and questions about scripture. At the start of every week during summer camp, Colleen reminds us why we are here and what God is calling us to do by leading the summer staff in Sabbath practices, worship, and spiritual centering. Through the pandemic, Colleen was integral in organizing and coordinating and connecting those of us who were far apart but close in each other's hearts, leading weekly virtual Vespers, sharing camp, sharing the good news of the gospel, and sharing the abundance of God's love until our socially distanced cups were full and overflowing. These accomplishments don't even begin to touch on the personal support Colleen provided to me and other camp staff during the myriad of wild and crazy crises and adventures that only happen when you live a camp director's life, and mostly happen on Thursdays when the program director takes a day off. I am grateful for Colleen and all she has done for this ministry. Camp Hanover, its campers, its staff, its critters, its very landscape are richer and forever changed and improved as a result of Colleen's service and dedication.
Virginia and Doug, thank you so much for those words. Heartfelt about Colleen. I'd like to invite Colleen to address the body if she would like to do that.
Thank you, moderator. And thank you, Doug and Virginia and so many others who have been wonderful partners in ministry for the last 7 years. I'm really, really grateful for the time to serve alongside of so many of you, to visit with so many of you, to be part of just incredible stories in this presbytery and beyond. I am excited for the ways Holy Spirit is moving here in the Presbytery of the James and all over the place, and for the things that are to come still. So thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you. God bless you. And thank you again, Virginia and Doug, for your beautiful words. Will everyone please join me in a prayer of thanksgiving for Colleen? Gracious God, we give our thanks and our praise to you for our sister in Christ, Colleen Erb. Thank you, Lord, for giving her a passionate love of nature and of children, a deep intellect and appreciation for the world around us, and a calling to enthusiastic witness to love you share with us through your creation. Continue to bless Colleen in her walk with you and her service for Christ and his church. Help all of us to continue to pray for Colleen as she takes her ministry and her calling to new fields and flocks. And let Colleen know how much she is loved and appreciated within this presbytery. In the holy and powerful name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Dan. And Colleen is in the room with me. Colleen, I echo, thanks be to God for your ministry. Thanks be to God for you. I now recognize Ruling Elder Stephen Hicks, President of the Trustees, to present their report, which you will find beginning on page 15 of your packet. Good morning, Steve.
On page 15 of the trustees report, item number 1 under trustees report taking the following actions. We granted permission to Ginter Park Church for a 10-year lease. Normally, we don't do 10-year leases. We will do 5 with possibility of renewal. But in this case, it was based on the usage of what was going to happen. This property that Ginter Park owns is not contiguous to the church property. However, after hearing everything about Colleen and what she's doing, something exciting is going to be happening on that property, and that is it's going to have an urban garden placed on it. They're going to grow vegetables for the community, not the church, but a separate organization. And not only that, they're also going to provide training for other city dwellers on how to create their own urban gardens. And anybody who has ever created a garden knows that it takes a while to turn a vacant lot into a really good producing garden. And a 5-year lease just seemed to be a little too short for that. So the trustees did approve a 10-year lease for that property. And I just want to let you know that we got some exciting stuff going on there on the corner of Brook and Walnut. So that's just want to share that with you. On page 16, the trustees make the following recommendations. The first one, and let me give you the background before I make the recommendation. Back in June of 2019, when we were actually meeting in person, the Presbytery of the James voted to approve that Camp Hanover would become a separate corporation and that certain funds would be paid out totaling $1.435 million. But no designation of where those funds were to be drawn was ever made. And we really noticed that as we were finishing up the 2020 audit and trying to tie down all of the numbers. And so the trustees had simply said, well, we'll take it out of what was known as the Dismissed Churches Fund. And we realized that we probably need to have Presbytery ratify that action. And so, Mr. Moderator, on behalf of the trustees, I move that the Presbytery ratify the usage of Dismissed Churches funds by the trustees to cover the obligation for the payment of $1,435,000 to Camp Hanover as agreed to at the June 18, 2019 stated meeting of the Presbytery.
Okay, the motion is before you. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? Any discussion at all? I see Brent Keys. Good morning, Brent.
Good morning. And good morning again. I move to amend the motion. I move that we change the word ratify to approve and delete the phrase by the trustees, so that the amended motion will read that the Presbytery approve the usage of dismissed churches funds to cover the obligation for a total payment of $1,435,000 to Camp Hanover as agreed to at the June 18th, 2019 State meeting of the Presbytery. And I have forwarded that to Jess.
Thank you, Brent. So the amendment to the motion has been made. That amendment is again that the Presbytery approve the usage of dismissed churches funds to cover the obligation for a total payment of $1.435 million to Camp Hanover as agreed at the June 18th, 2019 State meeting of the Presbytery. So now the amended motion is before you. Is there any
No.
Actually, we need
No.
a second. We need a second on the amended motion. Is there a second? Joseph Tabor, I recognize you. Good morning, Joseph.
I second the motion.
Joseph
Or the
seconds
amendment.
motion. Joseph, the amended motion has been seconded. Now, is there discussion on the amended motion? Please raise your
Moderator,
hand.
may I speak to my motion?
Yes, of course.
The background statement says that at the June 2019 meeting, when the Presbytery voted to approve Camp Hanover becoming a separate corporate entity, at that time, the trustees felt that the only source available for these funds was a dismissed churches fund, and subsequently paid this obligation out of this fund. However, my understanding is that the trustees do not have the authority to take monies from designated funds without Presbytery approval. So their decision and their action appear to have been inappropriate. Furthermore, for some reason, this motion is coming to the Presbytery 2 years after this decision was made. I should say that I'm a member of the Camp Hanover Board of Directors, and I'm very, very grateful for the support. I simply submit that the trustees' decision and action in this case was improper. Therefore, it is not appropriate for the Presbytery to ratify it, but rather that we simply approve the use of these funds. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Brent. Any further discussion? Please raise your hand to indicate so you may be recognized. I see no raised hands. That must mean you are ready to vote. So the motion before you is the amended motion that the Presbytery approve the usage of dismissed church funds to cover the obligation for a total payment of $1.435 million to Camp Hanover as agreed at the June 18, 2019 stated meeting of the Presbytery. If you haven't voted already, please do so now. Okay. I see 142 in favor and 3 opposed. The motion carries. Main motion back in for vote. All right, thank you. We have now approved the amended motion, but we still must vote on the main motion. The main motion was that the Presbytery ratify the usage of dismissed churches funds by the trustees to cover the obligation for a total payment of $1.435 million to Camp Hanover as agreed to at the June 18th, 2019 stated meeting of the Presbytery. Again, please vote on that when you see that poll come up. Yes.
Mr. Moderator.
The motion was amended.
Yes.
Okay, so it's been amended. That's not the wording now. You just voted on the amended motion a moment ago.
Right.
There's no objection that the vote's 142 yes.
Will defeat the main motion. Okay. All right. All right. So I'm correct. I've been corrected that the amended motion that you just approved by 142 to 3 would replace the motion the main motion that came without objection. Seeing no objection, meaning but by raised hands, so ordered. Okay, I think it's back to you, Steve.
Thank you. Item number 2 on page 16, and I'm on behalf of the trustees, I move the following: that the Presbytery give the trustees of the Presbytery of the James Inc. commission power under the Book of Order 2019-2023, G 4.0101 and 4.0205, to sell the properties of dissolved congregations, currently Greenwood, Montrose, New Covenant, and Gordonsville churches, and a 5.98 acres of vacant property in Goochland County at their respective appraised values, or not less than 90% of the value unless authorized by the Presbytery.
Okay, the motion is before you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Oh. I'm going to take this moment to address the questions. We did amend the motion, the last motion, and we approved that. We did not need to then re-approve the motion amended, do we? I'm sorry, Steve, to interrupt.
No.
Yes, okay. Fred needs to unmute. Sorry, friends. Trying to
There
get
we go.
clarification on the previous motion.
All right. Yeah, what indeed happened is that the motion was amended and the words were the ones that were presented by Brent. And so those words were, that amendment was approved. Since we're doing the awkwardness of polling, it's difficult to create a poll quickly. And so I ruled that what you saw on the screen and what you voted on was actually the new words. They were, the amendment was approved and there was no discussion on the amended motion, but the amended motion was before you. So if the Presbytery would prefer, then the amended motion is on the floor. You can remove the poll that's currently on the screen, Jess. And the amended motion is on the floor for discussion. And Jess, I don't know if you can put up the poll again after discussion, but certainly I would love to just speak to the fact that in 2019, the place where the funds were going to come from is Dismissed Churches Fund, but we didn't get the Presbytery to grant that permission. So I think that the amendment that was made and now the amended motion is an excellent motion. And I would encourage Presbytery to approve the amended motion.
Okay, so we're going to bring that back up. The amended motion, just to be clear, and friends, this is a lot harder than it looks. So thank you for your patience. So that is the amended motion before you for approval is that the Presbytery approve the usage of dismissed church funds to cover the obligation for a total payment of $1.435 million to Camp Hanover as agreed to at the June 19th stated meeting of the Presbytery. Okay, Linda, you have a question. Good morning, Linda. Linda, do you have a question? Okay, apparently not. Okay, I see. I did not call for this. I did not call for discussion on this, but we had discussion during the amendment. What's that? Okay. Is there any further discussion? I know a lot of you have voted, but if there's further discussion, I want to make sure that you've had any chance to talk to this. Raise your hand to indicate so, please. I see no raised hands, so there's no further discussion. The vote is now active. Please vote if you have not yet done so. Okay, I'm going to rule 144 in favor and 3 opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Steve, I apologize for having to interrupt your report. Would you please restate the current recommendation to the body?
Sure. That the Presbytery give the trustees of the Presbytery of the James Inc. commission powers under the Book of Order as presented to sell properties of dissolved congregations, currently Greenwood, Montrose, New Covenant, and Gordonsville churches, and 5.98 acres of vacant property in Goochland County at their respective appraised values, or not less than 90% of that value unless authorized by the Presbytery.
Okay, so the motion before you is there. We have, that is on page, just to refresh your memories, that's on page 16 of their report of the packet. That's number 2 under their recommendation. Is there any discussion on that recommendation? Please raise your hand. We have, yes, recognizing J.R. Marker. Good morning again, J.R.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a quick question on clarification. Is this asking for the commission powers in perpetuity, or just for the pertaining to these particular properties?
For these particular properties.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, J.R. Further questions or discussion? You have the poll. Okay. Yes, Mr. Stated Clerk. Recognizing Fred Holbrook.
Yes, thank you. Just to give you the information, these properties were all appraised, and those appraisals came in from an independent appraiser. And for the Presbytery's information, when you total the 4 church properties and the 1 vacant property, it is a value of $2.597 million. Numbers of those amounts, some of those amounts have been designated by the churches that were dissolved. But just to let you know, it's just in excess of 2.5 million.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, we'll present the motion before you that the Presbytery give the trustees of the Presbytery of the James Incorporated commission powers in accordance with the Book of Order to sell the properties of dissolved congregations, currently Greenwood, Montrose, New Covenant, and Gordonsville churches, and 5.98 acres of vacant property in Goochland County at their respective appraised values, or not less than 90% of that value unless authorized by the Presbytery. Please vote now. Okay, 147 in favor and 2 opposed. I declare the motion carries. Back to you, Steve.
Pardon me, Moderator, that completes the report of the trustees.
Thank you very much, Steve. And just as a reminder, if you have questions, please ask you to raise your hand so that I can recognize you, as I may not see them if they are in the chat. So to be recognized, please raise your hands. I now call upon teaching elder Denise Hall, moderator of the Committee on Nominations, who will bring their report. The report begins on page 17 of the packet. Good morning, Denise.
Good morning, moderator. I'm Denise Hall, an honorably retired member of the Presbytery and the moderator of the Committee on Nominations. As Patrick has already mentioned, our report is on page 17. First of all, just a reminder that we are looking for those who would be interested in being the vice moderator of the Presbytery for 2022, with the expectation that you would be elected moderator the following year. We are looking for ministers of word and sacrament. No longer is there a gender designation. We will simply, going forward, alternate between ministers of word and sacrament and ruling elders. So please check the website or contact me to get an application and fill out the nomination form. Thank you. Now, a couple of recommendations from the Committee on Nominations. The first one, Mr. Moderator, some changes to the mission and service team. Jess Cook is moving from vice moderator to member at large, and we are looking to elect Mary Jane Winter as the moderator. And on behalf of the committee, I move that.
Thank you very much. Are there any nominations from the floor, as it were? A reminder, though, that you must have asked the person who you are nominating if they are willing to serve. If you have a nominee from the floor, please raise your hand. I see no raised hands. We're ready to vote. The poll before you: shall the Presbytery elect the nominated persons to the mission and service team, that is class of 2021, Minister of Word and Sacrament Jess Cook, member at large, and class of 2022, Minister of Word and Sacrament Mary Jane Winter as the moderator? Okay, I see 142 in favor and no opposed. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator, our second recommendation concerns the election of the search committee for 3 presbyters. We are nominating 7 for this search committee. The Committee on Nominations looked for ways to be very representative of our presbytery. Different regions of the presbytery, ages, genders, validated ministry, Christian educators, small membership, large membership congregations. And there is no requirement that the search committee have only ministers of word and sacrament and ruling elders. And so you'll notice that we also have a member of a congregation as part of this group of 7. There was an 8th name, someone from a small membership congregation who had to withdraw from consideration. And because of an upcoming deadline, we decided to go forward with 7 names. As always, the Committee on Nominations welcomes nominees from the floor, especially one from a small membership congregation. The committee believes that the current group is a strong and talented slate. And so on behalf of the Presbytery, I move recommendation 2B, a search committee for the 3 presbyters.
Okay, and just for clarification, Denise, the Committee on Nominations does not object to a larger committee than 7 or 8. Is that correct? So that the body knows.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. The slate is before you. Are there nominations from the floor? Please raise your hand if you have a nominee. And again, ensure that you have checked with that person about their willingness to serve. Any nominations at all? See knowing raised hands, then the motion before you is, shall the presbytery elect the persons named to not be nominated, to elect them to the search committee for the 3 presbyters, the nominated persons. Shall the presbytery elect the nominated persons of the search committee for 3 presbyters: Beverly Bullock, Jess Cook, Barbara Fox, Ken Henry, Noah Morgan, and Jen Rowe. All right. 141 in favor and 1 opposed. I declare the motion carries.
And finally, Mr. Moderator, there are a couple of vacancies currently. If you are in one of those regions and have an interest to serve, please contact me or a member of the Committee on Nominations. And that concludes our report. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
And thank you, Denise. I now call upon Teaching Elder Gordon Lindsay, moderator of the Committee on Ministry, for their report, which begins on page 18 of the packet. And good morning again, Gordon.
Good morning, moderator. Our report is indicated on pages 18, 19, and 20 of the Presbytery packet. We have 7 recommendations to bring before the Presbytery body. But before I bring those up, I want to make one comment on the portion of the report where I report actions of the Committee on Ministry. At the October 2019 meeting, the Presbytery of the James adopted a new policy on sexual misconduct. That policy mandated that all teaching elders, certified Christian educators, and commissioned pastors would need to take a sexual misconduct and harassment training every 5 years. We contracted with the Lewis Center of Washington, D.C. to offer our program called Maintaining Boundaries in a Digital Age in beginning in January 2020. We have brought that program to a close as of the end of April of this year, and we are bringing it to a close with only 3 ministers in the Presbytery who are not compliant. When we adopted that program in January 2020, we did not anticipate the challenges that everyone would be facing in 2020 with the pandemic. And so I want to say thank you to everyone who completed the training, knowing the challenges that some people faced because of the pandemic. We are very grateful. There will not be any more training again until 2025. So that's when the next round begins. Now I'd like to come to the to the recommendations of the committee. You will find those listed on page 20 of the report. The first recommendation is that the Presbytery grant permission to the Committee on Ministry to act as a commission to grant change of status for minister members to honorably retired or member at large.
The recommendation comes to you. Is there any discussion? Please raise your hand if you have any discussion. Okay, Fred Holbrook. Hello, Fred. Not yet, Jess. Okay.
Mr. Moderator, may I make one comment?
Of course.
This recommendation is an effort to bring some efficiency into Presbytery meetings. Generally, these items are often offered to the Presbytery for approval as a consent docket item.
Understood. Thank you, Gordon. Fred.
Yes, moderator, there are several of these that need citations from the Book of Order that were brought to our attention. And I want you to know that I would like the presbytery to know that I'll add those citations to these recommendations that are being presented.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. Any further discussion? Please raise your hand if you have any further discussion. Seeing none, we are ready to vote. The poll coming before you is now, shall the presbytery grant commission powers to the COM to grant change of status to honorably retired or member at large for minister members? Please vote now. Okay, we have 140 in favor and 0 opposed. I declare the motion carries.
Mr. Moderator, our second recommendation is that the presbytery grant permission to the Committee on Ministry to act as a commission to validate ministries outside the congregation. Once again, this is a recommendation based upon bringing efficiency to presbytery meetings.
Thank you. The motion is made. Are there any questions or discussion on the motion? Please raise your hand if you have anything, questions or comments on the motion. I see none. That means we're ready to vote. The poll now says, shall the presbytery grant commission powers to the COM to validate ministries outside of the congregation? Please vote now. Okay. 134 in favor and 7 opposed. I declare the motion carries.
Mr. Moderator, the third recommendation I bring is that the presbytery grant honorable retirement status to the Reverend Rosalind Banbury effective March 31st, 2021.
Okay, the motion is before you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. The motion for you, shall the presbytery grant honorable retirement status to Reverend Rosalind Banbury effective March 31st, 2021. Okay, 141 in favor and 0 opposed. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator, the fourth recommendation is that the presbytery approve Appendix Y to the Committee on Ministry Manual, commission pastors in the POJ policy and handbook. That Appendix Y is printed in full in your presbytery packet on pages 45 to 74.
Okay, the motion is before you to approve Appendix Y to Committee on Ministry Manual, commission pastors in the POJ policy and handbook. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no raised hands. This is the shorthand. Poll, shall the presbytery approve Appendix Y to the COM manual, commission pastors in the POJ policy and handbook? Please vote now. Okay, I see 131 in favor and 3 opposed. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator, the next recommendation I bring is that the presbytery approve Proposal 1 to constitute the Committee on Ministry as a commission of the POJ. The Proposal 1, the wording of it is contained in pages 75 to 77 of the presbytery packet.
Okay, the motion is before you. I see a raised hand for questions. Good morning again, Joseph.
Good morning, Joseph Tabor, Minister of the Word and Sacrament at Culpeper Presbyterian Church. I am new in this presbytery, and so am still getting kind of the lay of the land for how everything is organized. My question is, when we adopted this structure that we're in, why was the Committee on Ministry not created as a commission of the POJ from the beginning? And why do we think that now is the right time to make that change? Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Gordon.
Well, in response, I don't know the past history of the Presbytery of the James, and that goes back some 20 to 25 years, long before my time. In terms of the proposal now, the timing, there are two reasons why we are bringing this forward in terms of timing. First of all, we bring it forward as a measure to bring efficiency, time efficiency into presbytery meetings. We have had some complaints from people about the length of presbytery meetings and wanting something that's a little bit shorter. The other reason, though, is because we have also received complaints about the process of examination in the presbytery, its spirit and its tedium. And we are bringing this proposal at this time in response to those concerns and complaints that were brought before the Committee on Ministry.
I recognize Alan Fisher. Good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon, moderator. I'm of a concern. I appreciate very much that the clerk is willing to provide citations, but when it comes to administrative commissions, we are required by the Book of Order to enumerate particular authorities. I know which ones COM is interested in, but we'll have to disqualify some of the others. I would like to see which ones we are not conveying by should we adopt this proposal. And because we don't have it in front of us, I'm inclined to want to table it or to refer it back to the committee for that detail. Several of the paragraphs of the Book of Order provide really sweeping responsibilities to commissions. And I know that's not what COM is asking here, but in light of the last question, it's important we understand the difference between constitutional committees and committees of the presbytery as a whole. When we give commission powers, we want to be specific and particular. I don't object to the spirit of the motion. I don't object to the spirit of the work, but it needs some more detail before I'm able to vote to support it.
Alan, as a point of clarification, are you wanting to make a motion to refer this back to the committee?
I'll go ahead and make that motion. Yes, that it really does need that specificity, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. All right. There has been now a motion made to refer this back to the committee, which I believe now becomes the motion for our discussion.
Yes.
What's that?
Needs a second.
Yeah, we do need a second. Okay. Is there a second on a motion to refer? Please raise your hand only if you are making a second to refer. Brent Keys.
I second.
Okay, so there's been a second to the motion to refer item E back to the Committee on Ministry. Is there any discussion on the motion to refer? I recognize Carson Ryan. Good afternoon, Carson.
I was just providing a second.
Okay, all right. Okay, the second has been provided. Is there further discussion on the motion to refer?
Moderator, just a reminder that they're speaking now to the merits of referral.
Yes.
Right.
Not to the content of the main motion.
Okay, so is there any discussion on the merits of referral? Please raise your hand if you have a. Okay, Sarah. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Excuse me, I think I was also trying to second the motion.
Okay.
But I would speak to agreement with Alan that I'd like to see all the details laid out.
Okay, great, thank you. If you have any discussion on the merits, please keep your hand raised. If you do not, please lower your hand just so I can see clearly who. Fred, you are next to, Alan, did you have further discussion on the merits of your motion?
That's not necessary, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Fred?
The only thing I would note is that the motion itself referred to G30109B, and it specified the exact powers being requested. So certainly the Committee on Ministry can take a referral and make it more, expand it. That should be no trouble.
Okay. Thank you. Liz Holmab, I recognize you now, Liz.
Yeah, at the risk of just revealing how little I understand, what's the point of it going back to the COM? What's going to happen there when they've already done the work to present this? What's going to walk me through what you're imagining is going to happen?
Fred, would you like to say?
Yeah, a motion to refer will have the group look at it again and see what the concerns were and put those into place. Personally, I would speak against the motion to refer because the reference is already there, 3.0109B, and you can't get more clear than that. And so I believe that the language is there. It is very clear.
Okay, thank you. I recognize Wilson Kennedy. Good afternoon, Wilson.
Good afternoon, moderator. Wilson Kennedy, First Richmond. I rise to speak against the referral because it seems to me that it's laid out clearly, as Fred has said in the response to Liz's question. The larger concern here for me is I've been part of this presbytery now for just a few months, and I'm concerned that we have some issues related to trust and how we trust one another to get the work done. And a commission, to me, undergirds the spirit of trust that is essential in our polity. And so I would just speak against this, hoping that we can give the appropriate trust to our siblings on the Committee on Ministry, hopefully the Commission on Ministry, to get the work of the presbytery done in an efficient way.
Thank you, Wilson. I recognize Carson Ryan. Good afternoon, Carson.
Mute. All right, there. Never know when I'm muted or unmuted. Part of the reason I would support the referral is because the citation that's given, 30309B, also includes empowering the Committee on Ministry to form administrative commissions. And if that's the intention of COM, then okay. But it doesn't enumerate in 30109B which one of the particular items are being authorized. So I think Alan's proposal helps clarify and helps to be clear what specific powers were given. I don't know if COM intended to take on the powers of being able to appoint administrative commissions. Maybe the moderator of COM can answer that.
I don't believe the Committee on Ministry was planning to do that.
And let me say that that is not the quote there. Actually, Carson is referencing a different section of the Book of Order that is not in this motion. He is referencing G3, which is not in here. G30306 is what he's referencing, and I communicated with him that that is not a mission that is being sought by the Committee on Ministry.
Okay. Brent Keys. Good afternoon, Brent. Nope. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to refer item E back to the Committee on Ministry? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we're ready to vote on the referral. So move to refer item E back to the Committee on Ministry. Okay. The motion to refer fails. There are 41 in favor and 96 opposed. Okay.
So
we're back to the regular.
back to recommendation E. Yeah.
So before the body again is recommendation E, that the Presbytery approve proposal 1 to constitute the Committee on Ministry as a commission of the Presbytery of James, part 2 in the packet, pages 75 through 77. Further discussion on that. Recognizing Nate Taylor. Good afternoon, Nate.
Good afternoon, moderator. Thank you for recognizing me. I am Nate Taylor, minister of Word and Sacrament, member of this presbytery and associate pastor at Salisbury Presbyterian Church in Midlothian, Virginia. I rise to oppose the motion before us. I greatly appreciate the language that was used by the Committee on Ministry Examination Subcommittee when they said, as members of the Examinations Committee, we believe that we are called to emulate Jesus's example, to act as guides and companions to those who come before us, to listen and to question, and to invite them to grow in their understanding. I also take my role as a member of Presbytery to question candidates on the floor of Presbytery very seriously. I believe that we are all, as a presbytery, entrusted with the sacred duty of emulating Jesus's example to act as guides and companions to those who come before us, to listen and to question, and to invite them to grow in their understanding. However, as a presbytery, we have not had as much time with candidates and inquirers to listen and to question. For me, this is the reason that I am most excited to attend presbytery meetings. In the proposal, the COM raised a concern that attendance wanes as meetings last longer. And they are right to be concerned about how we are good stewards of our time. However, if we take away the important work of the presbytery that takes place in meetings and relegate it to our commissions, then our presbytery meetings turn into reports rather than discerning the mind of Christ together. Thus, there will be less reason to attend presbytery meetings, as they may no longer seem as a responsible way to use our time wisely when the report could be read in an email. If we want to save time, we could move the sermon portion to the COM as other presbyteries do, which makes more sense to me when some of the candidates coming before presbytery do not intend to preach regularly as part of their validated ministries. Questioning candidates on the floor of presbytery provides a unique opportunity to get to know our future colleagues in ministry and to also learn about other members of our presbytery as they raise questions. And in my mind, this is one of the most important things that we do as a presbytery together. Questions this important should be both asked and answered out in the open, not behind closed doors. If there are complaints about the spirit of examination within the presbytery, the solution in my mind is not to sweep those problems under the rug, but to deal with them as a whole presbytery. Not only is the openness important to me, but the questions asked help us to all to engage our own theological beliefs as we listen to the candidates' responses. Please do not take away our presbytery's sacred duty to question candidates on the floor of presbytery and place it behind closed doors. And by doing so, take away one of the most exciting reasons to be at presbytery meetings. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Nate. I recognize Brent Keys.
Thank you, moderator. I rise to make an amendment to the motion. I move to amend the motion by deleting subparagraph C at the top of page 76.
Okay. Right, an amendment to that, to the motion has been offered. We would need a second, and that, just a reminder, that is the amendment is to strike paragraph C, which is on the top of page 76 in your packet. So to amend the current motion to exempt that paragraph. So the Presbytery approved proposal 1 to constitute the Committee on Ministry as Commission of the POJ, 75 through 77, excluding paragraph C on page 76. That's the amendment to the motion. Yes. Okay. Mr. State Clerk.
Yes, moderator, just a reminder, you already called for it, but there has to be a second to the amendment. And then there has to be discussion about the value of removing C.
Understood. I got that. Thank you. So is there a second to the motion to amend this to strike paragraph C? So let me raise your hand for a second, please. Fred, is your hand raised for a second?
No.
Okay, I need a second. Anybody would second that motion? Please raise your hand. Judy Blair, are you seconding the motion to amend? Please unmute.
Yes, I'm seconding the motion for amendment to strike.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Judy. Is there discussions on the merit of the amendment?
Moderator, may I speak?
Of course, Brent. Yes.
I speak against this motion, this recommendation, because it removes from the presbytery one of its most vital and holy functions and responsibilities. When I first heard the call to the ordained ministry, I was terrified. I was terrified that I was presuming. I was terrified that I was wrong and would be going in a bad direction. When somebody explained to me that in the Presbyterian Church, not only do I have to hear the call, a congregation has to hear the call, but also a presbytery, my peers, my fellows, they had also to validate the call. That gave me tremendous comfort in knowing that if I were headed off on the wrong path, there were people out there who would listen to the Holy Spirit and who would correct me by not approving me for ordination. Unfortunately, when I stood on the floor of Presbytery, National Capital Presbytery, and they asked for questions, no one posed a single question. And I felt like I had been robbed. I craved and needed to know that the Presbytery also discerned that God was calling me to the ministry. If we approve this motion, we deprive all future candidates of their right to be examined by the Presbytery. We Reformed Presbyterians are unique in inviting churches to have a voice in ordaining candidates to the ministry of the Word and Sacrament. Denominations with congregational polity, like Baptists, look only to the congregation for validation, not the greater church. Denominations with Episcopal polity, like Lutherans and Methodists, Episcopalians, Roman Catholic, reserve examination authority to a privileged few. The people of the church have no voice. Only in the Presbyterian Church do the people of the greater church have the opportunity and the responsibility to receive a candidate for ordination, examine them, and then speak as they are led by the Holy Spirit. This is the process in the PCUSA. It's the process established by our denomination. But if we approve this motion, we are saying we don't trust the process. We prefer to take responsibilities away from the people and give it to a select few. The rationale of the packet states, in the opinion of the COM, it's appropriate for the Presbytery to trust the process. This is the process. It is uniquely Presbyterian, and I consider it terribly misguided to say that following the process is akin to distrusting the process. It's self-contradictory, and I honestly don't understand what logic this motion is assuming. The rationale in the packet states the process that has been in place for decades appear to distrust, and then followed by pretty much everything that's part of the process. It makes no sense. But what this amendment clearly displays is a lack of trust in God's people and in the movement of the Holy Spirit among this assembly conveyed for this specific purpose. The rationale states that a major reason is to bring greater efficiency and timeliness. There's no indication the COM explored other options aside from the few that we've just discussed for shortening the duration of our meetings. I think it's important to note that neither our Book of Order nor our Manual of Operations requires us to hold worship services at Presbytery meetings. They don't require that we give various committees and constituencies time on the docket to make oral presentations. They don't require us to take time to recognize retirement. However, the Book of Order does mandate that the presbytery examine candidates for ordination. Why should we shorten our meetings by removing a required element but keep intact all of the optional elements? The rationale also states that the COM has received numerous complaints about the time-consuming nature of the process. I humbly suggest that it should be time-consuming. It's important. It's critical to our understanding and our theology of ordination. But I'm also concerned that nowhere does the rationale explain that while the presbytery has received numerous complaints, it has received significantly more positive comments about our ordination exams. Why should we respond only to the people who are complaining? And if there are complaints, surely there are ways to address these complaints less severe than eliminating this core feature of our theology and polity. If we approve this recommendation, what are we saying to the numerous friends, families, congregation members who have been, in their words, uplifted, inspired, and very happy with these exams? Why are we only responding to negative comments? I mean, if we take this line of reasoning, then if people start complaining about the worship service, even if more people say it's a great worship service, then we should eliminate worship services rather than addressing the substance of the complaints. Also, this rationale states that this proposal that the COM be empowered as a commission is consistent with the majority of the 172 presbyteries in the PCUSA. I have no reason to doubt this assertion, but on May 19th, a member of the PCUSA leaders Facebook group posted a question to the group asking whether their presbytery required candidates to read their statements of faith on the floor and whether their presbyteries examined candidates on the floor. This person received over 150 responses. Many people responded with answers from more than one presbytery. It was not a scientific poll by any means. But of those more than 150 responses, only 12 said that their presbytery does not examine candidates on the floor. The overwhelming majority said that their presbyteries do examine their candidates on the floor. I just wanted to clarify the statement that's given in the rationale. It may be true that a majority of presbyteries have given their COMs commission powers, but I'm not aware of evidence that a majority of presbyteries have removed from the presbytery the unique privilege and sacred duty of having a say in examining candidates for ordination. Lastly, I don't want to give the impression that I am insensitive to the concerns that have been raised by COM and its rationale. They are real concerns, and I believe we should address them. But I submit to you that completely eliminating this fundamental aspect, this aspect of our Presbyterian church life together, Church of the People, is not an appropriate remedy. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Brent. We've had now a couple rise against. Do we have any for? Please raise your hand if you are speaking in the merits of this. Yes, Sarah Dennis. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Good afternoon. Thank you, moderator. I speak against this amendment and for the original motion. I agree with Wilson that I think this is a trust issue. We elect the people to sit on COM from this body, and we should trust the work that they do. Candidates that come in front of COM have been through years of CPM and years of COM, or not years, but time at COM. And if we think that this body can discern something that all of those other people can't, including seminary professors, to me, that's a pride issue. And I think we need to own that and speak to that. As a woman who was examined in front of this presbytery, there was nothing joyful about it. It was badgering and scary and frustrating. And I think that we should invite conversation I think having candidates read their statement of faith after they've been approved through COM and invite conversation is a different thing than asking for approval. I also think it should be noted that if we look back to years of this time of questioning candidates, it is generally the same 5 people that stand up and ask questions. And that again is not representative of the 175 people that are on this particular meeting right now. So I speak against the amendment and for the original motion.
Thank you, Sarah. And again, just as a reminder, we're speaking to the merits of the amended motion. CM, I see you. Good afternoon.
Thanks, appreciate it. Christopher Tweel, pastor of Three Shot Presbyterian Church. Glad to be here. Yeah, speaking
No, we wouldn't have voted
positively for the original amendment, and also speaking as someone who didn't have a bad experience coming before the presbytery, but still fully agrees with this motion with respect to the importance and welcoming and vetting work that the presbytery does and has done. But to Sarah's point, years and years of vetting has already gone on. What we've seen in the past years in my experience with the POJ is not a process as the one that has been positively talked about so far, but instead, what I've witnessed is that there are members of the POJ who use some of these moments as opportunities to further their own theological agendas, as opposed to putting forward competent and useful questions to our candidates. If there are passionate members of the POJ who feel strongly about their personal call to see these burgeoning ministers on their way, then I suggest they serve on the COM. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, CM. I recognize Sam Adams. Good afternoon, Sam.
Thanks very much, Mr. Moderator. I would also rise to speak against the amendment and for the original motion. I think the most rewarding aspect of my vocation up until this point has been the opportunity to mentor students at Union Presbyterian Seminary who are preparing for ministry. They go through those who are in the PCUSA go through an incredibly demanding and rigorous dual process of examination by the requisite committees and their presbyteries and the MDiv degree that they navigate at Union. By the time they reach the stage at which they would be examined, they have been vetted in so many rich and important ways, tested. I do think that it's necessary for us to trust the process and the mentoring they have gotten to this point. At the same time, I would also just echo what Sarah just said, that and just make a side point that the size of our presbytery precludes growthful interaction when we are, as a committee of the whole. The size of our body is too large, and just in speaking to my students, the vast majority of them have not found their examination to be a growthful process or productive exchanges when that occurs. So I would again, like the last couple of speakers, say that the size of our presbytery and the way this process has unfolded the last couple of years
I'm going to try to
lead me towards,
will
lead me to oppose.
We've had a few now speak again, so I'm going to try to.
And support the original motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Sorry for talking over you, Sam. We've had a few now speak against the amendment to the motion. Are there anybody who would speak for the amendment to the motion? Would you please, if you are speaking against at this point, I will make record of you in your order that you have your hands raised. Is there anybody who would speak for the amendment to the motion? I see Joel Morgan, your hand raised. Good afternoon, Joel.
Sorry, moderator. I have a question, moderator. I'm a little bit confused because it seems like in the earlier motions that we approved around this, we approved A and B on page, basically that would have been A and B on 75. We didn't enumerate them that way, right? In the prior motions, we gave permission to act as a commission to validate ministries and to do these other things. And so, and so now I guess I'm just unclear about what the main motion actually says, that not the amendment motion, because it seems like removing C from it, we've already approved A and B. So if I can just have clarification on that, moderator, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome. As I understand it in the report on page 75, under proposal 1 of the the Committee on Ministry, A and B would still be intact by your previous actions. What we would be in question now is C, which follows on to top of page 76. That has not been approved by previous act. So this is the one in question for removal from the proposal 1 of the policy of the new constitute for the Committee on Ministry. Is that correct, Stated Clerk? Go ahead and unmute.
The Presbytery has not voted on page 75, A and B. They have not voted on that. It was brought to the floor by Gordon Lindsay. And when it made it to the floor, the proposal was amended. An amendment was recommended that item C be struck.
Okay.
You're speaking about the merits of striking item C from the motion on the floor. So A and B have not been approved.
Okay. So just to clarify though, and I want to make sure we get this right, when we said that the Presbytery grant to COM acts as commission for a grant of change of status for ministers to honor and retire members at large, that captures point B on page 75 of proposal.
Yes, I'm sorry, my mistake. What you approve the honorably retired, you approve members at large, you approve validated ministries. Those items were approved earlier.
And those are all item B as outlined on page 75 of our packet.
Right. Those are item B. And it seems a bit of redundancy here, but that's the only way we could do it for today's meeting was to bring it this way. So Joel, you're correct that item B was approved by earlier action. We're lumping it all together again here. And a part of that is redundant because of your prior action. But the motion on the floor is to strike paragraph C.
Correct. All right. Do we have anyone else to speak to the merits of the amendment to strike paragraph C from this recommendation? Evan, are you speaking for the amendment?
Kind of against the, thank you, moderator. Speaking against the amendment, but with a kind of a process question. If we strike this amendment, COM's next proposal 2, by my understanding, is exactly what letter C is stating. So if we strike the amendment, would we still then vote again on proposal 2?
My understanding is that if you struck C, you would then proposal 2 dies.
That's correct. Yes. We would not vote on proposal 2.
Okay.
Yep. I recognize Clay McCauley. Good afternoon, Clay.
Moderator, thank you. Clay McCauley, in a validated ministry, minister member of Presbytery of the James. I move the previous question, if I may.
Okay, so the question has been moved to cease discussion and debate and move to vote on the amendment to the motion of item C. The amendment is to strike paragraph C of the proposal 1 of the constitute the Committee on Ministry as a commission on ministry of the Presbytery of the James. It's to vote on the amendment, which is to strike paragraph C, point C on that. Okay, question has been called. We have to vote on the amendment. All in favor of cutting off debate, or can we do it without objection?
Must be seconded.
I know. Okay. We have a second on cutting off debate at this point. Raising our hands. Are those seconds? Those are second. Okay. All right. All in favor then of amending the motion. We'll put this up for you as a poll. What's that? What? We're moving on. We're to. Okay, which poll do we need up? Okay. Yes, please. Pull the poll. We're pulling the poll. Try to do things decently in order, folks. Okay, there was a call to question. Do we need to enumerate it further, or can we just say to call the question on item E from the Committee on Ministry report? Okay, we're going to put that poll up for you now. Call the question on item E from the COM's recommendations. No, it's not item C. Let me do this. It's yes, go.
All right, this is your friendly neighborhood parliamentarian. The simple way that we use the language previous question or call the question is, do you wish to stop debate on the amendment? Do you wish to stop debate? If you're going to vote yes, I wish to stop debate, that's the question the moderator has right now.
Okay.
And so what you can do, either a poll, Mr. Moderator, or you could say, is there any objection to stopping debate?
Okay.
We can get a poll up. We could do that, but you may ask that. Is there any objection to stopping debate?
Okay, and that's what I will ask. Is there any objection to stopping debate? If you have your hand raised, I'm assuming that's an objection to stopping the debate. Okay, I see no raised hands, so we are good to go. Now what we need to do is we need to vote on the amendment.
Yes.
So the coming on the poll will be what you just had, Jess. The motion to amend the original recommendation by Committee on Ministry by removing item C to examine candidates as a power of the Commission on Ministry. Okay. The amendment has been approved. I'm sorry. I misspoke. So just to clarify, if you are moving to the amendment to the motion is to remove the examination for ordination from the COM's commission powers. Just making sure everybody knows what they're doing. If you have to refer to item C on page 76 of your report.
May I say, moderator, that my apologies to those who are having to experience this parliamentary process over Zoom. It's always tough. But at this point, the question is, are you voting for the amendment, which would remove paragraph C?
Correct.
And if you vote yes, then you are for removing, you're in favor of removing paragraph C. If you vote no, you are opposed to removing paragraph C.
Okay. Please make sure your vote reflects that. If you vote yes, that means you are in favor of removing paragraph C. If you vote no, you are not in favor of removing paragraph C. Okay, I declare that the amendment has been defeated. 100 against and 37 in favor.
So now you're back to the original motion.
Original motion.
Found at the bottom of page 75.
Okay. All right, so now we are back to the original motion that is found on page 75 of your packet. Further discussion on the main motion, the original motion. I see Carla, she's been waiting to talk for a while. Hi, Carla, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Carla Pratt-Keys, teaching elder, Ginter Park Presbyterian Church. I'm prepared to support both of these proposals, but I do want to offer a word of disappointment about the process and a suggestion for the future. I support these proposals because they address many of the concerns I've had about the way that our examinations are conducted, just the way it plays out in our Presbytery meetings. I think the Committee on Ministry has listened to people who've been unhappy about what we've been doing, and I appreciate the work that you have done to craft something different, and I think and hope something better. My lament is that more people weren't invited to be involved in conversation about what the next steps would be to participate in the process, reflecting on it and redesigning it. This is important. I mean, the concerns that Nate and Brent raised emerge from the idea that this is a very important part of what presbyteries are called to do. I had offered to convene some groups to do some listening and brainstorming around this, or just to participate if someone else wanted to convene those kinds of groups. I think that if you bring more diverse groups into conversation about something like this, then you receive some more interesting ideas as a result, and also cultivate a deeper sense of commitment to the plan that emerges. I think something as important as this deserves that sort of time and attention from a broad group within the presbytery. So again, I think these are steps in the right direction. I intend to support them, but I suggest and really strongly suggest that the Committee on Ministry convene some groups to do some listening and evaluating, maybe a year from now, to see what it is that we really want to accomplish with these exams and whether we are doing what we intend to do and really want to do. And then to see if any new ideas emerge after we've tried this for a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carla. Sarah, shoot. Hello, good afternoon.
Am I here?
Yes, Sarah, you are.
I'm not sure of the parliamentary way to do this, but I have a deep concern about voting at this point. As someone who's following the chat, people are very confused about this amendments and the vote. And I think most people don't understand what we're voting about. And I have a deep concern about voting about something so important in such a chaotic environment. So you can stop and clarify as much as you want, but I would like to see this tabled until we can reconvene. Hopefully our next meeting will be in person and we can have this conversation in an orderly fashion that doesn't feel like utter chaos.
Okay, Sarah, would you like to formulate that into a motion to postpone to a subsequent meeting?
Oh, thank you. I would like to move to postpone to a subsequent meeting.
Okay, the motion to postpone has been put on the floor. I need a raised hand for a second. Nate, are you raising your hand as a second to the motion to postpone? Okay, Nate has raised his hand to postpone. Is there discussion on the motion to postpone to a subsequent meeting? Do we need to state the meeting time now? Would it be the next meeting, Mr. State Clerk, October? Okay, let me ask Sarah. Sarah, would you want that to be moved, postponed to the October stated meeting?
Are we going to be in person in October?
Still in question. We're not sure.
Okay, can we have this system worked out a little? Yes, I moved to the next meeting, I move we postpone to the October meeting.
Okay, the motion has been made to postpone to and seconded to the October meeting. If that is in fact what Nate Taylor would be agreeable to, since he was the second. Without objection, Nate, if you object, raise your hand. All right, now the discussion. Ralph Baker, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ralph. Ralph Barker, I'm sorry. Ralph, do you want to speak for or against the motion to postpone?
I move in motion that we postpone. Agree with the rest of them.
Okay. Okay, very good. Stephen Hicks, who I recognize you this afternoon. Hello again, Stephen.
Major weather in the forecast. There's no rain. There's no major wind. So it's just going to be right in the hands of the USGA, the setup committee. And again, Mark Rothman brought it up in the earlier segment, Jason Gore being on there.
Jess, please mute Ralph Barker. Stephen Hicks, good afternoon.
Thank you, moderator. As a professional registered parliamentarian, the motion to postpone to the next meeting is not correct. Robert says that you cannot postpone beyond the next quarter, which if you count July, August, and September, we cannot postpone to the month of October unless we have within our manual the ability to do so. And Fred, I don't believe we do.
I'm sorry. We probably do not. So I always lean on Steve as the more up-to-date parliamentarian. And so it would be the motion to postpone to a subsequent meeting so I was incorrect.
No, we couldn't even do that because it's beyond, unless it's going to happen between now and the end of September.
Okay, so it's the motion to postpone.
No, it's not that at all. What we need to do is refer it back to the committee and have the committee then bring it to the October meeting.
All right, so I'm going to declare that the motion to postpone is out of
valid
because Roberts now does not allow longer than the 90 days.
Correct.
For the next meeting. So there is motion. There's no motion on the floor at this moment.
Okay. Recognize, so there's no motion. That motion is no longer in debate. Do we have?
So what you have now,
back to original motion.
What you have now is the main motion is on the floor. The main motion is on the bottom of page 75 and the top of page 76. And that's what's on the floor.
And if knowing the spirit of the body, there may be those who would like to make a motion to refer this back to committee. Would someone want to make that motion? I see a hand raised. Jewel Ann Parton, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm confused here by, I thought we'd already voted on this. So if we haven't voted on it?
No, we have not.
Oh, we haven't. Okay, then I was just asking a parliamentarian.
No, we have not voted on the original motion, on the main motion. Kara English, good afternoon.
I was working on getting my hand raised. It's not me.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Rosalind Banbury, good afternoon. I can't hear you, Rosalind. I'm asking you to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is it appropriate to refer? Can that motion be made?
That is in order, yes. Are you making the motion to refer this back to the COM? Rosalind?
I was basically asking a question, but if it's helpful, I'm glad to refer it.
Okay. All right. The motion is made to refer this back to committee. Is there a second on the motion to refer? Please lower your hand if you're not making a second on the motion to refer. Dana McKnight. Good afternoon. Please unmute, Dana.
I second the motion to refer it back to committee.
Thank you, Dana. Any further discussion on a motion to refer item E, which is that the Presbytery approve proposal 1 to constitute the Committee on Ministry as a commission of the Presbytery as according to packet page part 2, reports pages 75 through 77. To refer back to committee means that the committee would then bring it back to a future meeting for our discussion. All right. Further, Sarah, shoot. Good afternoon. Can't hear you, Sarah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, unmute her again. Here we go. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I'm
Sarah.
just trying to make the motion to refer. So Rosalind
Okay.
made it. It's been seconded. That's all that needed to happen. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Anyone else to speak to the merits of referring the motion? David Forney, I recognize you. Good afternoon, David.
Point of order. I thought we had already descended on referral. I thought this at the early part of this discussion, we talked about sending it back to COM and that motion failed already.
Not on this point, not on this particular item, this recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Other discussion about the merits of referring? Evan, good afternoon, Evan.
Thank you, moderator. It seems like a lot of the dissent, it deals with the merits that were under proposal 2. So I would speak against referring proposal 1 back to COM, and a possible compromise may be ending up referring proposal 2 back to COM. So I would speak against referring proposal 1 back to COM. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Evan. Recognize Sam Adams. Hello again, Sam.
Yeah, I didn't identify myself properly. Sam Adams, Union Presbyterian Seminary last time. It does seem to me that with about 45 seconds of clarifying remarks, it would be possible for us to have real clarity on what it is that we're voting on today. And we had some robust discussion about the amendment. And I do believe we could reach a point in this meeting where we could come to some clarity about what each of us is voting for. I would see an effort to refer back as an effort to delay on something that it seems that the majority of the body actually has clarity on for this meeting.
Okay. Let me, for the sake of the body, I will clarify again what we are voting on. Page 75 in your packet, proposal 1, constitute the Committee on Ministry as a Commission on Ministry of the Presbytery of the James, approved by COM on May 13th, 2021. That includes the proposal, subparagraphs, proposed powers to be granted to the Commission on Ministry, continuing to page 76, including the rationale for the proposal, and then ending right before proposal 2, which will be found on page 77 of your report in your packet. So that is the fullness of that right now is what we are considering for approval. Does that help? I hope. Kenna Payne, good afternoon.
I agree with Sam. I think we're beyond the point of confusion and slow chat and slow raised hands. We are back now to the original motion. I see no reason to delay. If people have read the packet, they've already formed their opinions, I hope, on this. And I think referring it back just does a disservice to the Committee on Ministry at this point in time. And to speak earlier, the young man who said we should come to the compromise, well, I don't think we can look at option 2 without having had option 1 pass, step 1 and step 2. So I think they, in this case, needs to be done in order. So I am speaking against referring it to back to the committee.
Okay. Okay, very good. Any other discussion on the motion to refer back to the committee? Seeing no raised hands, I declare we're ready to vote. The motion is to refer item E, Presbytery approved proposal 1 to constitute the Committee on Ministry as a Commission of the Presbytery of James in accordance with your packet, part 2, reports pages 75 through 77. That will be the poll coming up. And again, if you vote in favor, yes, that means you want to refer this back to COM for them to bring to a future meeting. If you vote no, that means you are not wanting it to go back to COM for approval at a future meeting, and that will be potentially approved here. Just say the motion to refer proposal 1 of the COM. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, we have 45 in favor and 88 opposed. That means that the motion to refer fails. Exactly. So now proposal 1 is back on the floor, outlined as item E in your packet. The Presbytery approve proposal 1 to constitute the Committee on Ministry as a commission of the Presbytery of James packet, part 2, reports pages 75 through 77. We'll put the shorthand up for you in a minute of that. What's that? Okay, there's discussion. There's discussion. Hold on. We'll hold on the vote. We got a few discussion on the main, back to the main motion. I recognize Richard Goodman. Good afternoon, Richard.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator. Richard Goodman, Minister Member, Blackstone Presbyterian Church. Move the question.
Okay, the question has been moved. Yeah, that's right. Do I have to second a call for the question? No. Okay, we need to see a second to, is there a second to stop debate? Call for the question. We have a second. All right. If everybody could put their hands down, we're going to call for a fresh vote. If anyone opposes stopping debate, please raise your hand. Okay, we have one opposed, so we have to continue the debate. That's the rule. Okay, the debate has ended. So we are good to move on now for the vote. The recommendation is, shall the Presbytery approve proposal 1 to constitute the Committee on Ministry as a commission of the Presbytery? Okay, we have 91 in favor and 35 opposed. I declare the motion carries. Thank you. Gordon, back to you.
I come to our next recommendation, which is that the Presbytery approve proposal 2 titled Ordination Examination in the POJ Next Steps. That proposal is printed in full on pages 77 through 78 in the packet.
Okay, the motion is before you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Again, that the Presbytery approve proposal 2 titled Ordination Examination of the POJ Next Steps on your packet, pages 76 through 77. Let me actually make a clarification. That is pages 77 through 78, not 76 through 77. Any discussion, please raise your hand. Kenna Payne. Good afternoon again, Kenna.
Afternoon. I think this is a natural outcome of approving proposal number 1. And it addresses all the concerns or the logistical needs that I would have on this. So I will be supporting proposal number 2.
Thank you, Kenna. Further discussion? I recognize Nate Taylor. Good afternoon again, Nate.
Yes, I'm beginning with a question. How many people serve on the examination on committee?
I believe it's 8. I need to check my files. There are 4 members of the of the Committee on Ministry who serve on the examination, then there are also several co-op members. And I believe it's another 3 or 4 co-op members who are not members of the Committee on Ministry, but are representative of the Presbytery as a whole.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate.
Glenna Finnegan might be able to confirm that for me.
Fred. Good afternoon, Fred.
Yes, thank you, moderator. Gordon answered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion? Okay, I declare we're ready to vote. So the poll coming before you will be, shall the Presbytery approve proposal 2 titled Ordination Examination into POJ Next Steps? Okay. All right. The results is 103 in favor and 14 opposed. Okay, motion carries. Gordon.
Okay, I bring our last recommendation, which is that the Presbytery approve a 3% increase in the minimum compensation criteria for 2022. I'd like to say on this proposal that the figure of 3% was adopted because there was no increase to the minimum compensation criteria for 2021. The Presbytery in the year 2020 did not propose an increase because of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on church budgets and finances. And so with this figure, we are trying to make up for this past year.
Okay, the motion is before you. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no raised hands, we're ready to vote. The poll coming, shall the Presbyteries approve a 3% increase in the minimum compensation criteria for 2022? Okay. 116 in favor and 5 opposed. Motion carries.
Mr. Moderator, that completes my report to the Presbytery.
Thank you very much, Gordon. The Committee on Preparation for Ministry report begins on page 89. There are no recommendations, but Ruling Elder Linda Coy, who is moderator of the Committee on Preparation, is available if there are any questions. Are there any questions about the Committee on Ministry report? Please raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, well, that was fast. Thank you all. Now call upon Teaching Elder George Whipple, the moderator of the Leadership Connections team, to give the report, and their report can be found on page 90 of the packet. Good afternoon, George.
Good afternoon, Patrick. Our report can be found on page 90 to page 101. We we wish to share with you a bit from the small church ministry that will give a report to the presbytery. And I'm going to call on Deborah Rexroad, our associate for stewardship, to begin that report. Deborah's been working with the small church ministry for several months and has spent a great deal of time working with our small church ministry congregations.
Good afternoon, Presbytery. Thank you, moderator, and George Whipple and the Leadership Connections team for giving the small church ministry an opportunity to share with you as a part of our meeting today. In my work as the Associate for Stewardship for the Presbytery of the James, one area that has been especially meaningful for me has been the call to work with our smaller congregations and help them navigate what it means to steward ministry in a congregation with fewer than 100 members. The past year has revealed many things about those congregations and those who lead them as pastors and elders. It has revealed the resilience and the determination with which they continue to be in ministry, even during a pandemic. It has also revealed some of their unique needs and concerns, as well as their joys and celebrations. We would like you to know a little bit about these congregations in the Presbytery of the James. Did you know that 60 of our 98 congregations, nearly 2/3, have fewer than 100 members, and they range anywhere from 4 to 98. These congregations are vital places of ministry and mission. Some have even grown in the past couple of years. You also may not be aware how these congregations are served. Only 11 of our small membership congregations have pastors who are called and installed. 13 are served by Covenant One pastors who have a 6-month contract. 16 are served by Covenant Twos who have a 12-month contract. 3 of our churches, our smaller churches, are now being served by commissioned pastors, previously known as commissioned ruling elders. And there's currently a vacancy in 17 of those congregations. Those congregations rely on pulpit supply and other means to continue their worship together. Most of our Covenant One pastors serve 20 or less hours, and our Covenant Two pastors typically serve 30 or more. One of the greatest concerns we have for many of our pastors who serve in small membership congregations is the lack of medical and pension benefits. Most of them are given time for vacation and continuing ed, but there's a distinct inequity for those who do not receive medical or pension benefits. The second concern we have for the pastors who serve our smaller congregations is the more temporal nature of their contracts with these congregations. Some serve for 6 months with the possibility and potential of renewal, and others for 12 with that same type of contract arrangement. This leaves pastors in a somewhat anxious position of not knowing how long they will serve, and it leaves the congregation in a continuous state of wondering what future leadership will look like. Our small membership congregations are blessed by those who serve them because of their deep passion and love for leading the small church in ministry. Today, we appreciate your taking note of this ministry that's provided to our smaller congregations. And in addition, to provide a deeper awareness of the ministry of the small church, we want to begin to celebrate these ministries by hearing more of their stories, hearing from their pastors and members of their congregations. So as part of our report today, I want to spend just a few minutes with Lisa Salita, who is one of our small church pastors. Lisa is a member of the Small Church Ministry Task Force and has served in many capacities as a part of the team. Most recently, she served as the moderator of the Leadership Connections team that oversees the work of small church ministry. Lisa received her MDiv in 2014 and has served as a small church intern at Hopewell. She was ordained in 2016 and has served Ebenezer, Genito, and is currently the interim pastor at Madison. Lisa, are you with us?
I am. Hi,
There you
Deborah.
are.
Can
There
you
we
hear me?
are. Yes, Jess, if you'll spotlight her for us. As I begin my interview with Lisa, I want to invite all of you who are attending the meeting today to interact with us in the chat. If you have ever attended, been a member, or served as the pastor of a smaller congregation, or you're currently in or serving a small membership church, we want you to answer a couple of questions in the chat. The chat is available, and Barbara will post our first question, which is, and I'm going to pose this to Lisa, what are the things that bring you joy serving in a small membership church? Lisa?
First of all, I have to say that I love the warmth in a small church. They are family. I love the interconnection, how each person's faith story is tied to the history of all the other families in the church building and the community. And those stories are so deep. The stories tied to the pulpit Bible, the children's table and chairs that were made by the great-great-grandpa of the little ones who sit in them now, or the story they still tell when times get hard of how they had to rebuild the sanctuary after the Christmas Eve fire during World War II. There's such an awareness in these stories, such a gratitude of all that these folks have received, and that's why it fuels their desire to keep on going with their congregations, even when times are hard now. And I really love how resourceful everybody is in a small church. Everything is handmade or homemade or handcrafted, from worship banners and quilts to even construction projects like ramps and picnic shelters. And the work is taken on by church members themselves. They do the painting and the landscaping and the electrical work and the plumbing and the roofing just because it needs to be done.
Lisa, that resourcefulness sounds wonderful, but what are some of the challenges you have experienced?
I have seen difficult discussions and decisions over what many other churches leaders would consider to be just tiny amounts of money. Here are some of the real things that I have seen so far in my ministry. Maybe we should disconnect the phone to save money. Or we can keep using the printer if you hold it shut like this and you don't do more than 5 copies at a time, or we don't need a printer anymore, I'll just do the copies at home. Or Christian Ed limits their choices to book studies that they can do using secondhand or surplus books. Or we don't have $300 in the outreach budget to bring back the bluegrass band that was such a big hit. So we're just going to use a CD and we hope it's going to be as good this time. There are so many times I have seen folks try not to add to folks' worry or budget problems by taking care of things on their own, but I worry that that doesn't help because they keep the true costs and the true needs of their ministry hidden.
One of the things I have seen in smaller congregations in our presbytery is that the resources, including people resources, are often so limited, and it's hard sometimes to have the energy to envision ministry and programs, but much less plan and carry them out. So Presbytery, here's your second question to answer in the chat. What are some of the struggles you've experienced serving in a small congregation? Lisa, as people answer in the chat, how would you answer that question?
First, I think fatigue is real, especially this past year for everyone, congregations and sessions and pastors. Fatigue is real, but so is financial stress among our smaller congregations. Deborah, as you've already been talking about, some have had the same pastor for years, but others are seeing relatively frequent turnover. So remember, those covenants are either for 6 or 12 months at a time. And, you know, even the covenant pastor relationships that were made decades ago are still handled by the Transitional Ministry Subcommittee of the COM. So planning for pastor transitions is just a reality, and it can be good for churches to have a pastor come in with some new ideas or bring their own new resources or have some new connections. But churches struggle with this. How are they going to pay? Is it better to offer more hours, more salary, or maybe they need to offer benefits because they are increasingly realize we can't do both, and I'm not so sure we can do either. Because here's the thing, that pastor's pay, the pastor's salary is often a huge portion of a small church's budget. And so as they try to do right by their pastors or attract a pastor or retain their pastor, they end up asking, do we cut program budgets or ministries, or do we cut our benevolences? Or can we keep the pastor with what we are offering right now? Or what would it mean to what we do if we cut anything else? I have seen such hard choices, and I got to tell you, they have an impact not just on the congregations, but often on the community.
Lisa, what are some of the choices you've actually seen churches having to make?
I've seen churches whose decline in numbers has resulted in moving from full-time to part-time, from installed to covenant, or a covenant to supply or commission pastors. And I absolutely need everyone to hear this. Part-time and bivocational and commission ministers have enormous gifts and such commitment to ministry in their congregations. But I can tell you, it's so hard to try to preach and meet congregational needs and moderate the meetings. So it's so hard to have any time or energy to help reimagine or revitalize, especially when you're working another job too. And ours is such a large presbytery geographically. And that adds to the difficulty. So many of us are bivocational now, and most are spread out. My SPIM colleagues in the south side part of the presbytery had to stop meeting monthly for lunch because it was too far to travel, or took too big a chunk out of the day, or they couldn't get off work from their second job to go. But there's some other ways the economics of decline affect these congregations, especially in rural areas. Now, one thing I've got to tell you, small churches take their baptismal vows really seriously. Every baby is loved and nurtured, but parents are facing tough choices because little ones are loved, but bigger churches provide programs or equipment or facilities. And here's the thing that happens in small towns. If families think about changing churches, they don't have many options, and that may mean that they choose another church with really big difference theologically to get a place with a nursery that's equipped, or a daycare program. Our small rural congregations know this. Most often their PCUSA church is the only one in their county. It might be one of the only, or the only Reform or mainline congregation. They might be the only presence of its kind in their community. So they wonder what will be lost if they don't keep going. And I got to tell you, that's on the hearts of small church members and their pastors. And even though the congregations are small, that question, what will happen in these communities, is huge.
Lisa, thank you for your time and your sharing all that you've experienced while serving in a smaller congregation. We appreciate your heartfelt sharing. We hope in the future to have an opportunity through the Current and the Vine over the next few months to hear more of these stories. And so if you have a particular story you would like to share, please let us know. Now I'd like to turn this report over to Jason Cashing, pastor of Gregory Memorial Church in Prince George's County. Jason is currently serving as the moderator of the small church ministry and oversees the small church intern program in our presbytery. Jason, what are you hoping we can do as a presbytery to address some of the needs of our smaller congregations and to care for the pastors who serve in these congregations?
Thanks, Deb. Honestly, I would like to share a recent experience of mine by way of example to help us look at the ways in which we can continue to relate with and connect with one another as we support one another in ministry. So good afternoon, I'm Jason Cashing, teaching elder from Gregory Memorial Presbyterian Church and member of the Small Church Ministry Task Force. I'd first like to thank many of you for engaging with our chat during our report. I've appreciated seeing your responses and resonating with them. And of course, I'd also like to refer you to our report on pages 97, 98, as well as the newly included information found on pages 84, 87 regarding part-time and transitional ministers, but that's not what I want to talk with you about today, if I may. I would like rather to name the elephant in the room. So at our last Presbytery meeting, two things stood out to me in very stark dynamic. First, we celebrated the completion of a $5 million capital campaign by one of our member congregations. Well done. And second, the Presbytery of the James celebrated the life of two congregations as they worshiped together for the last time ever. And we then went on to also entertain the initial request of a third congregation to consider closing an event which has in the meantime come to pass and whom we lifted up and celebrated just this morning. Now, this dynamic by itself is not actually the elephant in the room, though it could be easily considered as such, though if it were as straightforward as a debate of how we use congregational finances in the denomination, we might actually have an easier time dealing with that. Rather, the elephant in the room that I want to name and lift up is something much deeper and subversive and does actually require from me a moment of confession. So thankfully, words from our Book of Common Worship succinctly meet this need. I have not loved you, O God, with a pure heart, nor have I loved my neighbors as myself. So please allow me to share some of my experience. In the weeks and months following our last Presbytery meeting, living with this disconcerting dynamic, I found myself drifting deeper and deeper into lament. Lament that my brothers and sisters in faith at Second Presbyterian could, in the space of a couple years, come up with an amount that is more than 30 times the amount of my annual operating budget as extra, even as congregations closed because the resources simply were no longer there. And I found myself lamenting my own situation and feeling jealousy toward my colleague and friend, Alex Evans, that he should be able to rejoice in such abundance while I wonder each year where the funds will come from to close our budget gap, which ministries will again need to be trimmed of fat which they no longer have, and whether we'll make that goal at all. In short, this dynamic had caused me to lose sight of the overall purpose and calling of our presbytery, which is that we are supposed to, above all else, be in relationship with God and each other. And I confess to Alex and all at Second Presbyterian, and before all of you as my family in faith, in this, I have not loved God with a pure heart, nor have I loved my neighbors as myself. Now, thankfully, I've already had occasion to sit and talk with Alex, and he is not now hearing anything new. And he's also graciously agreed to share these thoughts with the rest of his congregation who may be in attendance. So they should not be hearing anything new either, though I continue to ask their forgiveness. But even as I rationally suspected, Alex shared with me all the good, necessary, and wonderful things which that capital campaign addressed and achieved. I don't want to steal their thunder, so if you're curious, please go to Alex and ask him yourself, what did you do with your capital campaign? Because they are phenomenal things that should be celebrated and lifted up. Ministries which were strengthened and increased and born out of the vision of this campaign. And I rejoice now with Second Pres at the ways in which relationships and ministries have been deepened. But do you see it yet? Do you see the elephant in the room, the elephant that entices us to a sense of rugged individualism or even isolation in our ministries, causing us to ask, why them and not me? Or conversely, thank goodness them and not me, as opposed to seeing all these dynamics as matters of us and we together. You see, this elephant draws us subversively to give lip service to the connected relational nature while living and ministering in our own bubbles and confines. This elephant has even led us as a presbytery to all too often labor under the illusion that regular business is itself the business of the presbytery, instead of honoring the covenant relationships in which we not only live and minister, but by which we are bound. Our business is indeed important, but it is not the sole or foundational purpose, as I think we've even borne witness to today. And this same elephant caused me to struggle initially to see the capital campaign of Second Presbyterian and their ministries as anything other than a show of excess in the face of mourning and grief, and to wonder what, in a denomination that celebrates relational connectivity to one another, might have been different. What else could we have seen achieved by that amount of financial support in congregations that question yearly and even monthly to see their future? This elephant then led me to dishonor the ministry of my extended family and focus only on what the congregation I serve has or does not have. Now, thankfully, by the grace of God, I have realized it's not my place or really any of ours to give too much attention to that question. Such is, I believe, a path that leads to distraction and misguided conversations masquerading as faithful debate. A yet more faithful path, though, is now before us, one which acknowledges this elephant in the room while simultaneously invites us to live an even more faithful, connected relationship with one another, recognizing that each of our congregations, each of our ministries, and the overall health of both presbytery and denomination rest on the reality that we are intricately bound to one another. What affects one affects all, and the loss of even one congregation is the diminishment of every congregation. Now, I have no intention of telling or even suggesting anything specific that you or your congregation should do now. Certainly, I could say that I have ideas, but those are ideas that are mine alone and currently exist in a vacuum. But I would take this privilege you have allowed me to invite you to be aware of these disparate dynamics which do exist even in our own congregations and presbytery, and to actively dream about how you might partner more faithfully in relationship and ministry with your colleagues. Then I invite you to commit to taking even one step to go further in connected ministry, maybe even with a colleague you don't know yet as well. And I will invite you also in the weeks to come to keep an eye on the POJ's social media, as we will be highlighting some of the stories of our smaller congregations and ministries. I believe we are on the threshold of amazing things as we step again into greater connectional nature with one another. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Mr. Moderator. This concludes the report of the Small Church Ministry Task Force.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you all so much. I now call on Teaching Elder Jess Cook, who's co-moderator of the Mission and Service Team, to give their report. The report begins on page 101 of the packet. Good afternoon, Jess.
Good afternoon. And the Mission and Service Team report is on page 101. As you will note in there, we have been shifting a little bit in the leadership so that I can also help participate on the search committee for the upcoming presbyters. So that's been a bit of a shift between Lindsay moving. And so thank you to Mary Jane Winter for her interest and leadership in coming back on to serve in the leadership of the Mission and Service Team, and everything else you can find in there. And that is the conclusion of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. I now call upon Doug Walters, who's the Executive Director of Camp Hanover, to give his report. Good afternoon, Doug.
Good afternoon, moderator. Friends, I have one very big thing to say to you today, and that is summer camp is back. On Sunday, just 5 days from now, we will welcome the first kids back to your camp for the first time in nearly 2 years. 475 campers are registered for overnight camp, and 195 campers are enrolled in day camp, exceeding our 2021 goal for camp enrollment, and it's double the amount of day campers we've ever seen enrolled in on-site day camp before. Wow. I, for one, cannot wait for that first opening campfire to hear the sounds of laughter and singing and joy erupting from the children and the youth and young adults God has called here this summer. As they build community, learn to live in, live with, and care for creation, and practice being the people God created them to be. After a year like any other, we are grateful to have the opportunity to live into our mission to provide a place apart for renewal and growth in an environment of Christian hospitality. We have made it to this point and navigated the past 18 months through the grace of God and because of the generosity of time, talent, and treasure given by so many of you who know the importance of the power of camp. The individuals among you who serve on the board of directors have demonstrated steady and wise leadership, shepherding Camp Hanover through these times. Having embarked on a strategic planning process just as COVID was beginning to rear its ugly head, the board are now in the final stages of developing a roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years and guiding the next chapter of the Camp Hanover story. We hope to share this vision with you this fall. Over the last 18 months, countless volunteers have contributed hours upon hours upon hours of sweat equity, caring for the property and facilities, maintaining and improving your camp's infrastructure and appearance, and enhancing accessibility so more people can experience God in this special place. This past weekend, a group led by Robert Fiddler from the Presbyterian Church of Fredericksburg moved the Celtic Cross dock into its final position at the lake. And the Presbytery's disaster relief team, spearheaded by Brown Pearson of Southminster Presbyterian Church, made numerous trips to camp during the pandemic. In addition to completing the wheelchair-friendly path to the lake and constructing a new tower outside Wise Lodge to hold the New Covenant Presbyterian Church bell, the team converged on Camp Hanover 2 weeks ago for a 4-day final push to prepare camp to welcome kids back to summer camp. Bridges have been built, longhouses have been painted, trails have been cleared, firewood split, potholes patched, wood chips spread, fences repaired, hazard trees removed, bathrooms renovated, air conditioners installed, campsite shelters readied, and so much more. All of this has been made possible because of the incredible mission support of the Presbytery of the James, its congregations, and the individual donors who choose to give generously to support the work that happens in this place. Nowhere is that generosity more evident than by the response to the 50-day dash. Since May 1st, over $40,000 has been given to provide camperships and invest in extra supplies, materials, and the PPE that's going to be necessary to offer campers a safer, fun summer experience in the midst of a pandemic. The goal for the dash is $50,000, and with just 5 days to go until campers arrive, we are in the home stretch, just shy of the goal by about $7,000. I invite you to join with the others who have participated in this dash, who have donated, who have served, and who have helped to make camp happen. Visit camphanover.org/dash to learn more and make your gift today to help camp get across the finish line. As I conclude my remarks today, there are 2 other ways that I'm going to ask you to help. First, if you know of a young person who loves kids and would be a good fit as a camp counselor this summer, please encourage them to apply to work at camp. We still have a few gaps on our staff that we need to fill as soon as possible. Overnight camp counselors need to be at least 18 years old. Activity leaders and lifeguards can start at age 17. And there are opportunities for youth who are 16 years old to serve as day camp counselors. Working at camp will change their lives. Sometimes all it takes is a push from someone like you for them to hear and be open to God's call in this way. So later today or tomorrow, please direct someone you know to apply for a job at www.camphanover.org/workatcamp. Our summer theme this year is "This is our prayer." And so my second and final request for you today is to make this your prayer. Pray for the campers, the staff, the volunteers, and all who will come to call Camp Hanover home this summer. May they grow closer to each other and in their relationship with Christ. And may God give us all the energy and enthusiasm to make this the best summer ever. Thank you. Moderator, this concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Doug. Well, we're coming to the end. We appreciate all of your staying with us and supporting this ministry together. We will hopefully, at our next meeting, which is the third Saturday in October, October the 16th, be able to come together in person again. But we just don't know quite yet. We will, of course, keep you updated. As we know, the sweetness of coming together again will again enrich the life of our ministry that we share in common. And so, completing our agreed upon business, I declare that the 108th stated meeting of the Presbytery of the James is adjourned. And I ask you to please join me in prayer. Let us pray. All loving, all wonderful God, we thank you for the ways in which you have guided us through our time together. We are mindful, God, of those things that seem so important that we have debated, discussed, disagreed. But God, we're also more mindful of the things that keep us united in common. For the things we share, the faith we hold together, the ways in which, God, you are always calling us to greater faithfulness, but not by ourselves. From the least to the greatest, from the smallest to the largest, God, you are God of all. And so guide us in our common ministry. Help us to lift each other up. Help us to learn how to journey together better. Fulfill your work among us through this presbytery. Unite us across the distances. And God, may your word carry forth into this world, enfleshed through our work. May we speak the words of Christ to each other. May we live the life he calls us to. May we share all that he intends for us to share, so that together or apart, we might together carry on the common mission he gives us. Through Christ, we ask all these things. Amen.
Amen.
Our meeting is adjourned.